What happens when a black girl with a stitched-up bag walks into a polished training camp built for the right kind of champions? She just wanted to play, but her joy became a threat to their system. What happened next changed who gets to decide who truly belongs. On the battered turf of Eastern Academy Stadium, where there were no broadcast cameras, no hot dog stands, no cheering zones, just the worn-out grass, scuffed concrete bleachers, and a flickering scoreboard struggling to remember why it was even on. That night, something remarkable happened. Something nobody saw coming, and it happened in the final seconds of the school championship game when the score was tied at 1-1. Both teams gasping for breath like they'd been drowning. And then, without warning, the impossible unfolded before everyone's eyes. Laya Sanders, an African-American girl with untamed curls and a spirit that coaches seemed determined to ignore, took control of the ball. And let's be clear, she didn't intercept it. She seized it, exactly like a woman decides when she's tired of being overlooked. Alone against three defenders, with sweat stinging her eyes, the roar of classmates in the stands echoing in her ears, and her heart hammering like a war drum, she surged forward. Not a faltering jog, but a powerful charge, an unapologetic assault. Then, without breaking stride, she struck. Not just the leather sphere, but everything she'd endured across 2 seasons on this team. Whispered doubts, invisible boundaries, stale expectations. She blasted it, not into the cheap net, but right into the heart of all that bullshit she'd been forced to swallow. The ball soared, spun, and nestled into the right corner of the net with the kind of precision that makes one take notice. It was poetry, like a note hitting its chord on cue. And in that moment, everything around her exploded into sound. Cheers carrying raw emotion, whistles piercing the night, and maybe even a tear leaking from someone who understood what this moment meant. Then, as if in a movie, Laya turned and sprinted. No, danced toward the stands, slanting her arms skyward to form a heart shape, pointing it straight at her mother, who stood clutching a homemade sign reading, "Play Laya," after finishing her late shift and boarding a crowded bus just to be here. But here's the filthy twist. The moment she smiled, she was shut down. "Sit down, Sanders," barked Coach Hartman, like an executioner more than a mentor. He didn't even glance her direction, just wagged his finger toward the bench, as though she were a traitor caught mid-celebration. "For what?" she panted, heavy with adrenaline and disbelief. "Showboating. We don't perform. We play. This is a team, not your personal parade." You could hear a pin drop, maybe more than one. Confusion rippled across the bleachers like spilled popcorn. Her teammates stiffened. Fear hovered in the air. Nobody dared intervene. No one, damn it. Even Ray, her only ally on that field, leaned forward and breathed, "Damn, Lay," but froze when he caught the coach's gaze. So she sat, collapsed into the bench, chest heaving, drenched in slick perspiration, strands of hair plastered to her forehead, and those burning, defiant eyes that spoke volumes. She couldn't muster a retort. The only voice she heard was the one that had been whispering all these years. "You should have known. You knew the rules weren't the same for you." By the time they reached the locker room, it smelled of sweat, cheap deodorant, and stifled silence. She undressed slowly, each movement deliberate, each gesture a silent question to the dimly lit walls. She knew exactly what awaited her tomorrow. These same halls, those same eyes, those whispers behind her back, some taunted, some pitied, and all carefully clocked her every step. And she knew that Coach Hartman would treat her like an inanimate object, never acknowledging that she existed unless it served his hierarchy. He re-entered the room without a word and gently slapped blonde-haired Alice on the shoulder, the same Alice who last week had danced the mambo after scoring and was showered with high fives. The coach departed without a glance at Laya, pretending nothing had happened, as if staging a silent request for her invisibility. At home that night, her mother, who wore decades of silent burdens on her face, greeted Leia at the bus stop with a tight hug. No words. None were needed. With one look, her mother spoke volumes because she had spent a lifetime navigating exactly this kind of dismissal. Be better than the rest, and they'll still tell you that you don't belong. The next morning, the school website flashed a new update. Game recap. Our team wins. Alice Rowe is player of the match. The irony wasn't lost on Laya. Alice didn't so much as mosey over the ball in the final minutes, but hey, she danced. Leah shut the tab, her jaw clenched. Then she opened her inbox and stopped. There it was, a message from the State Youth Soccer Federation. We noticed your performance in the last match. We'd like to speak about potential selection for regional tryouts. Only a few hours ago, she'd been banished for emotion. Now they were inviting her to step up. She stared at that sentence like it was a lifeline, or a joke too twisted to laugh at. Then her phone rang. 2 hours later. The voice at the other end had her name on the screen. But the owner was familiar. Coach Hartman. His tone was passive-aggressive, oozing condescension. Sanders, he began in that smooth tone, as if he were the one doing her a favor. They called from the Federation, asked about you. I told them you're inconsistent. You crave attention. You love the spotlight. I was honest. Honest? Funny. Your honesty reads like a public dismissal, she replied calmly, ice in her veins. He cleared his throat. I'm just looking out for you. I don't want you to get in over your head. She didn't need to bite her tongue. What you don't want is me stepping outside the little box you feel comfortable controlling. And with that, she hung up. Back at school the next day, anonymous sticky notes started appearing around her locker. Showboating won't make you a star. You embarrass the team with your drama. One goal doesn't make a career. Her body ached from the sudden weight, but inside something began standing taller. Not loud, but steady, defiant. Later that afternoon, history class became a spotlight. Ms. Jameson, new to the school, weary of timid silences, spoke up about the White Revolution of the 1960s. Then she looked directly at Leah and said, her voice measured but resonant, being quiet does not mean you're peaceful. Pride is not aggression. Sometimes you have to stand up so others might feel ashamed that they're sitting down. Leah met her teacher's eyes for the first time that day and didn't see judgment. She saw understanding. That night, alone at her desk, she pulled out her journal and scribbled, they aren't afraid of my goal. They're afraid that someone like me can celebrate it like she earned it. And I did. She stared at the words, letting the power sink in. Quiet, patient, and building. What happens next will change everything. You do not want to miss how this unfolds. Wednesday morning smelled like a blend of disinfectant, knockoff perfume, and hypocrisy, the unofficial scent of Eastern Academy. Leah Sanders walked down the main hallway in her soccer uniform, even though there wasn't a game that day. Not because she was mistaken, not because she forgot, but because, in spite of everything, she still clung to the ridiculous, aching habit called hope. Hope, that sweet-talking liar. She knew it was foolish, but she was still human. The hallway buzzed like a live wire. Students passed her with vague glances, some curious, some indifferent, a few laced with smugness. When she reached the lineup board pinned outside Coach Hartman's office, her heart beat like a drum roll she hadn't asked for. She scanned the names. Alice, Jade, Anna, Leah Sanders? Absent, like she never existed. No surprises. But it still hit like a cold slap. Her jaw tightened, her shoulders straightened. She didn't cry. She hadn't cried since 8th grade. And that streak held strong. This wasn't sadness anymore. It was heat, pure and pressurized, like a kettle left too long on the burner. She turned on her heel and headed straight for Coach Hartman's office. No knocking, no polite cough, because she had knocked before, plenty of times, and all she ever got in return was silence, the kind of silence that tells you you're tolerated, not valued. He was seated at his desk, pretending to be busy shuffling papers that didn't matter, back stiff, face blank, as if he were conducting national security and not running a high school soccer team. Why am I not on the roster? Her voice was calm, but it cut like steel. Coach Hartman looked up slowly, eyes full of that see-through glare, the kind that didn't look at you, but through you. Because you're ruining the atmosphere, Sanders. She blinked once. The atmosphere? I ruined the atmosphere with a winning goal? No, he said with a smirk. With your behavior afterward. This isn't a circus. It's a sport. Then, like he wanted to seal it with phony intimacy, he stood and approached her, lowering his voice like he was about to share wisdom. That was his routine. Get close before sticking the knife in. You need to learn discipline. Tone down the ego. My ego? She cracked a dry smile. You're not a coach. You're a warden, and I'm not your servant. His face tensed. He looked ready to call security over a teenager standing her ground. You won't get a recommendation. You can forget about the state team. She didn't flinch. She didn't say thank you. She didn't slam the door on her way out, because if she had, the force of it might have knocked him clean off his high horse. The day before the next match, an email landed in her inbox. The state federation was still interested, but they wanted feedback from her coach before moving forward. That's when she realized this was it, the line, now or never. She pulled out her laptop. No rehearsed speech, no scripted apology, just truth. My name is Leah Sanders. I'm a forward. I'm a black girl in a mostly white school, and everything I do on the field is examined under a microscope. When I smile, it's attitude. When I celebrate, it's arrogance. When I'm silent, it's suspicious. She uploaded the video, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook for the aunties and uncles. Captioned it simply, one goal shouldn't cost you your future. And it didn't just trend, it erupted. Comments flooded in like a rising tide. My daughter went through the same thing. You showed grace and fire, respect. She gave them a win and they punished her for smiling. Too familiar, too painful, too real. That night at school, Ms. Jameson approached her in the hallway after class. The hallway was quieter than usual, like it was holding its breath. I saw your video, the teacher said quietly. Leah tilted her head slightly. Yeah? You're not alone, remember that. Simple, honest, the kind of sentence you hold on to when the rest of the world is trying to erase you. But not everyone wore kindness so easily. In the hallway, Coach Hartman's assistant, Mr. Talley, a man who dressed like a professor but played the role of lapdog, cornered her near the vending machines. You're taking this too far, Sanders. The coach just wants order. You're chaos. She looked at him, square in the eyes. Funny how telling the truth is always labeled chaos when the truth is inconvenient. He didn't respond, just blinked and walked off like a balloon that lost air. That evening, the school website had nothing. No mention of the video, no official statement, no curiosity, just silence. Again. But the local paper, that was another story. Big headline. High school athlete speaks out against coach. Social media in uproar. So now it was no longer an in-house issue. The silence was cracking. And when truth breaks through the walls, it doesn't knock. It kicks the door down. A day later, the phone rang again. Federation. This time the tone was polite, cautious, like walking on thin ice. We've heard about the situation. We want to be respectful, but you understand how complicated this is. Yeah, she replied. Being me has always been complicated. Next morning, someone defaced her bike, in broad daylight, scratched across the frame in white paint. Show off. No signature, no surprise. That evening, her mother walked through the door and found Leah in the garage, scrubbing the paint off with her bare hands. Not a cloth, not gloves, hands. Who did that? Her mom asked, her voice tight with anger. People scared of the truth, Leah replied. Her mom didn't ask more, just stood next to her and began helping. She filed an official complaint with the school the next day. By noon, a district oversight committee had been notified. That was the first ripple. Coach Hartman summoned her after school. He was different now, not cooler, not kinder, just rattled. You've ruined everything, he hissed. You don't know what you've started. This is war. She sat down across from him calmly, no shaking hands, no fear. No, Mr. Hartman, I didn't start this. You did, when you decided my joy was something that needed punishing. Later that night, another anonymous message slid into her email. No subject line, no signature. You're not rewriting the rules, Sanders. You're just playing louder than allowed. She read it, deleted it, then looked in the mirror. I'm not playing loud. You just got used to silence. This is the tipping point. Everything you've been waiting for. Right here. Stay with it, because this story isn't done setting the record straight. When Leah stepped off the bus, The welcome committee wasn't a federation rep with a clipboard, nor a warm handshake from a camp director, and certainly not a banner with her name. What greeted her was a look, icy, calculating. A glance from the security guard posted at the gate, whose voice said, "Good morning," but whose eyes questioned, "What are you doing here, girl?" And she wasn't surprised. 17 years in black skin had taught her to read expressions faster than textbooks. Before you learn algebra, you learn tone. Before you master grammar, you master survival. The state training camp was shiny, polished, and antiseptic, the kind of place that reeked of money and carefully sanitized excellence. Even the smell said, "You don't belong here unless you came with a resume and the right zip code." On the front door was a glossy sign, "Welcome, future champions." But when Laya walked in, the message felt more like, "Welcome, chosen ones," preferably from the right schools and the right backgrounds. The team was already there. Girls wearing fresh, branded shorts, new cleats, talking like they'd known each other forever, that suburban kind of loud where the volume masks the privilege. "Hey, Karen. Oh my God, Jessica, I haven't seen you since Nationals. Did you hear who else they invited? Some girl, Sanders, black, from Eastern. Who even is that?" Laya stood off to the side, clutching her duffel bag with the frayed strap her mother had stitched together with fishing line and prayer. She didn't introduce herself. She knew better. In circles like these, speaking first meant painting a target on your back. Let them think she was temporary. But then the first scrimmage happened, and everything changed. She stepped onto the field and laid down the truth without ever opening her mouth. Not through flash, not through tricks, but with sharp passes, perfect timing, and a vision of the game that couldn't be taught at summer clinics or elite camps. She played like someone who didn't just study soccer, she understood it. By the time her second assist hit the back of the net, a blonde girl named Candace whispered, "Well then, where did you come from?" Karen, the captain and clear favorite, was less amused. "Okay, Sanders, let's keep it real. This isn't YouTube. It's not about putting on a show." Laya raised an eyebrow. "If my level's bothering you, maybe it's because yours isn't high enough." Day 2, lunchtime. She sat alone, by the window, that unspoken exile reserved for those who make others uncomfortable without saying a word. She was halfway through her meal when someone called out, "Yo, Sanders, your sneakers are falling apart." She looked down. The left sole had a tear, real one. She didn't flinch. "Symbolic, don't you think?" she said without looking up. "They're coming apart. Just like your composure, every time you're forced to see someone you've ignored outperform you." Laughter, from the far end of the table. But not as loud this time. Not mocking, curious. Some heads turned. Day 3, she got the summons. "Laya Sanders?" said a tall man in a too-perfect suit. "Please take a seat." She entered a room that smelled of lemon polish and hidden agendas. Across the table sat 3 men, the coordinator, the technical director, and a federation rep. All in tailored shirts, all with eyes that didn't blink enough. "We've received some concerns," one of them said, "from players, about your behavior. They say you're arrogant." She tilted her head. "Can you be more specific?" "You're disruptive to the team dynamic. You may not be a good fit culturally. We need to evaluate whether your presence supports the spirit of this squad." She didn't blink, didn't stutter. She paused, met their gazes, and answered, "When I score and form a heart with my hands, it's inappropriate. When I stay quiet, it's threatening. When I play better than expected, it's a problem. So tell me straight, is it my attitude you dislike? Or my skin?" Silence, heavy, as if oxygen had taken a sick day. The technical director coughed. The coordinator, the same man who 2 days earlier had spoken about fair opportunities, lowered his voice. "We can't let politics enter team dynamics. But you're okay with racism making the calls?" And then something happened that none of them expected. A voice broke the tension. Lucia, a Latina midfielder, quiet until now, stepped through the door. "I heard everything. If she's not a team player, then neither am I, because I learned more from watching her in 3 days than I have in 2 years of club play." Lucia, the coordinator began. No, she said firmly. We've all seen how she's treated, and if you can't fix that, maybe you're the ones who don't belong. The next morning, the Federation's official account posted, Laya Sanders officially added to the extended youth state team roster. Her skill, intelligence, and resilience represent the future of the game. It went viral in minutes. Comments poured in, girls like her are the team. Proud of you, baby girl. Black girls have been told they're too much for too long. It's time we admit they're enough and then some. Back at school, Coach Hartman sat in the gym, scrolling through the ESPN feature. Eastern Academy's Sanders speaks out. You don't punish someone for enjoying what they've earned. He called her in. This time he didn't summon her. He invited her. The difference was subtle, but it tasted like something new. Regret. He stood by the bleachers, unsure. Not the same man. Maybe I went too far. You're a strong player. I wish you the best. She looked at him, calm, unmoved. I'm not mad. I'm just done going back to places where my joy gets penalized. Then she walked out, but not before stopping at the goalpost. She placed the ball, stepped back, shot, top right corner. Same spot, same message. Sometimes to break a system, you don't need to scream. You just need to not stay silent. Sometimes to be seen, you have to score. But to be remembered, you can never apologize for being exactly who you are. And Laya Sanders, she made sure the world remembered.